Warren. My husband Brandon Warren was diagnosed with colon cancer in June of 2007. At the time, he was 32 years old. He had no prior health issues. He was, basically in really good health. We had a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 9-month-old. And to say that it was a shock for us is just an absolute understatement. The doctors told us fairly quickly on that it was stage 4 colon cancer. It had already spread to his liver and his lymph nodes, and that it was considered incurable. One doctor in Texarkana even told us that he suspected we only had about 6 months. We immediately left Texarkana and went to MD Anderson in Houston because we felt like that was our best shot at beating this. And when we got there, we really weren't met with a lot more optimism. Our doctor there, he told us that he would do the best he could and that there were some really good treatments out there. But I can remember that first day in his office asking him, is there anybody who has beat this, that has our situation, our circumstances, that has beat this? And he said to me, there are a very small percentage of people in the same boat that are 5 years out. And I just looked at him and I said, okay, well, that's what we want. We want to be in that percentage of people. So you tell me how we're going to do it. And he kind of chuckled, and I think, honestly, I don't think he thought that there was much hope at all for us. But we fooled him and started a very extensive chemotherapy program. And we were fortunate enough to be able to do chemotherapy in Texarkana and only go to Houston to do our checkups. We had to go once a month for the first couple of years, and the checkups always, it seemed like every time we went, we were getting more shrinkage or the tumors were stable. It always seemed to be really positive, really good news. And I can remember at the 1-year mark me saying to Dr. Kopetz, you didn't think we would still be here, did you? And he said no. He said, I would not have bet that I would be treating him in 6 months. So fast forward 3 years, because we pretty much did the same regimen for 3 years. We pretty much would do, 4 cycles of chemotherapy and then go back to Houston for a checkup, for scans where they would, do a complete workup and come back and tell us what they were seeing. And we pretty much did that for 3 years with just maybe like some slight adjustments in the medications that he was receiving through the chemotherapy. But it didn't vary a whole lot. Well, at the end of 3 years, they started seeing some growth, which is what they told us all along. There will come a point where this chemotherapy will not work anymore. Different people have different opinions on that the cancer comes back stronger or more aggressive. I tend to believe that the chemotherapy has done so much tearing your body down that it just doesn't have the ability to fight the cancer anymore. And so we made it about 3 years, and at the end of those 3 years was when Brandon finally, his body just quit fighting, and we had to go into a clinical trial. We chose to go into a clinical trial. At that time the boys were a little bit older, but they were still little. And so we opted to do the clinical trial, and it was hard. It was very difficult. And they had told us all along that the clinical trials were just, just horrific. And they weren't lying. The side effects, it was very difficult to watch, I should say. I can't imagine what he was going through. But for me, as an outsider, as an observer, to be in that hospital room with him while he was receiving these treatments, it was absolutely horrific. But we did that for about 6 months. And we were home one week, and I got a phone call. Just a random, out of the blue phone call from Lee Holsey. And he said, Phyllis, this is Lee Holsey, and I hope I'm not out of line, but I'd like to talk to you about something. And he started talking to me about Dr. Lentz, Dr. Rigdon Lentz, which is a doctor from America that actually practices medicine in Germany now. He started telling me what they had gone through with Michelle and how the treatment worked over there and how they, the success that they saw. He was very, very careful to tell me, I can't promise you anything. I can't assure you of anything, but I feel like I need to tell you about this treatment. And so I, of course, ran with it and, came home and was telling Brandon all about it. And if any of you know my husband or knew my husband, he was not open to the idea of moving to Germany for an amount of time, no matter how brief, for medical treatment that he felt like wasn't available in the U.S. for a reason. So we, Lee and I still talked a little bit off and on, and he was really good about, just checking on us and making sure that things were okay. And then finally, several months later, we came to a point where Brandon was open to the idea of going to Germany. The side effects of the trial had become worse and worse and worse, and then the results we were getting weren't as good. And now, instead of just there being growth in his liver, there was also growth in his lungs. And sadly, when you're in a clinical trial, I have no doubt they want it to be successful. But you're a number, you're a guinea pig, and yes, they've done great things, to advance medicine through clinical trials. But when you're the person that's being that number or that guinea pig, it gets incredibly difficult. And we just didn't have a lot of faith in the system anymore, and we just didn't have a lot of hope anymore. And Lee called again, just kind of checking on us, and we kind of got to talking, and I had done some more research and given Brandon some information, and he finally agreed that maybe that's what we needed to do. So then came the issue of money. And when we left, we weren't sure really of anything. We weren't sure if our insurance was going to cover any of it. We weren't sure of the exact cost. We weren't sure of how long we were going to have to be over there. And Lee kept saying to me, we will figure it out, okay? And I kept saying to Brandon, I can't tell your kids that you're not here because we didn't have enough money. And what the Michelle and Holsey Foundation did for us was so much bigger than money. And they gave us hope. They gave us back that little bit of hope that maybe things would be okay. And so we loaded up. We moved to Germany for 2 months. Within just a matter of weeks, it was like that. It was done. And my mom moved into our house and had our kids still going to school. He and I literally picked up my passport on the way to the airport on a Monday morning and drove to Shreveport, Louisiana, and got on a plane to Germany. And we got over there, and by the time we got there, his pain was just horrific. It was constant. There was never any easing up. No amount of pain medication, narcotics, anything that the doctors prescribed, nothing was helping anymore. And the thing that I want you to know is that we were there 2 months, and we came home, and my husband died a month later. But that treatment did not fail. What he's doing in Germany is it's not a failure. My husband went from just eating pain pills, trying to make it through the day, backed off to so much fewer than what he was taking. The pain got so much better as the tumors began to shrink. There were tumors in his back that were pressed up against these nerves, and he literally, he couldn't sit, he couldn't stand, he couldn't do anything without being in constant pain. The only place that he got any relief at all was if he was in a bathtub or a swimming pool. It was like the buoyancy of the water helped relieve the pressure. But while we were over there, he went through his first, cycle of treatments, and we saw so much pain relief that both of us were so hopeful and so excited. And I truly, truly believe that we were seeing those tumors shrink. But his body had just withstood as much as it could. And there were so many other complications because of the side effects of chemotherapy. I mean, he basically did, 3.5 straight years of chemotherapy. And then the last year he was doing a trial called HAI where they infused they infused the liver with chemotherapy through his hepatic artery. And his body just couldn't stand it anymore. And what eventually happened was his biliary duct collapsed, and they couldn't open it back up, and that put him in liver failure, and there was basically nothing that could be done then. What I need you to understand is that it wasn't a failure, and what Lee Holsey is doing and his family is doing and the board of directors of the Michelle Lynn Holsey Foundation are doing in her honor and in her memory is they're creating hope. They're giving hope to people who otherwise don't have it. And I know that a lot of people feel hopeless. There's no price for hope. You can't put a money tag on it. Unfortunately, you can put a price on cancer treatment. And I'm so incredibly thankful to Lee and the foundation for everything that they did for us.